now I'm just going to go through the different zones of the biofield anatomy map, and we're just going to work at releasing any of these things that resonate for you, all right? And I'm going to use the weighted fork in the field instead of the unweighted fork. Generally, in biofield tuning, we comb with the unweighted forks and find these areas. But lately, a number of us have been getting more into using the weighted forks. These are usually used on the body like that. But we've been using these in the field. And they're just a little more efficient. They don't interact with quite as much energy. So they definitely work to move things, but it's not as dramatic. So this is what I call a skim coat, where we're just going through it quickly. So the left foot holds energy related to being mired or stuck in an uncomfortable situation. Maybe, you know, your parents were violent or you were unwanted, you know, in childhood. Like, that was a really uncomfortable situation, but you didn't have any choice and you had to be in it. And so I'm getting a little nauseous in here. It's feeling pretty gnarly in this spot. So everybody, do me a favor, take a big breath in. Good. Do you feel that over there? It's like, whoa. One of the troubles of being energy sensitive. So, you know, what happens when we have this kind of experience in childhood is that we will often, as adults, remain in situations that are toxic, that are unhealthy, that are inappropriate for us, because we're kind of habituated to that. So when we liberate the left foot, we become aware when we have a choice to step away from something that isn't serving us. That we don't have to stay and endure and suffer through something just because it feels like we need to, because that's just a familiar feeling. We recognize that we're at liberty to preserve our organism and move away from pain and towards what is more appropriate for us. So in an adjustment, what we do is we bring energy in. We drop it into the body, into the chakras, into the midline, or, you know, we say that there's a minor chakra in the foot. Then the second step is to integrate that energy. I call it mixing paint. And the third step is a process we call columning, which is describing or opening up a coherent pathway between the body and the front of your field and the unified field, so that you are able to experience reality through a clear pathway of information, sort of unobstructed by the noise, the habits of your pain body. Creates a clear channel of information flow both away from you and to you. And that helps you to learn to be more responsive and less reactive. So we're discharging the pain body and plugging you into the unified field. And so we column until we feel like we've got a really solid sort of thrum the whole way through. Okay, so the right foot holds energy and information related to how we feel about stepping forward in life. Like, what kind of path are you on? Is it a rocky road? You know, has it always been rocky? Has it always been difficult, right? Because generally, if it was rocky back here, it's going to be rocky up here because it's familiar. You know, energy moves along established pathways. And, you know, whatever the story was early on, very often becomes the story of our life. And so part of biofield tuning is this practice of interrupting old patterns and resetting things back to neutral so that our aperture of possibilities opens up and we start to perceive other alternatives other than the usual struggle. That's what I was talking about stepping back and widening the lens so that you go, oh, I could go down this habitual road of struggle and drama, or I could actually not go there and I could go here instead. And I could choose to, you know, not get into this with this particular person, but rather sidestep it into an easier path. So with the right foot, it's similar to the left. The left is more, I'm free to move away from non-beneficial stressors. And the right foot is more, I'm free to move towards, you know, that which I'm more inclined to, that which serves me, that which makes more sense in this moment rather than some kind of habitual default. So the essence really, that we're working towards is really about getting resistance out of the magnetic field in the electrical system. We want to get rid of the resistance, because the resistance that we're holding, whether it was that resistance to our alcoholic father, chasing us around the house with a belt, that's really deeply embedded in your, your body, your muscles, your diaphragm, that habitual, that creates the story. But when you release that resistance out of your system, you really enter into much greater ease. Things get easier. Just, flow. Okay, so the left knee relates to healthy attachment and release, also unhealthy attachment. So people who have a tendency to stay in jobs longer than they should, stay in relationships longer than they should, people who struggle with addictions. These are all things, people who don't trust, letting go. These are all things that kind of stick in the left knee. So if there's anything that you've been holding on to, whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship, whether it's, a habit or an addiction, by releasing the left knee, it helps us to unstick so that we can, again, just like the left foot, just kind of release or let go or walk away from, be liberated from whatever it is that we're, doing that, maybe that back and forthness about. Okay, so here's another big kind of spot. So everybody take a breath. That's a pretty extreme spot. So when I get into spots like this that don't want to move, I've discovered that if I just put a crystal in them, and I know, believe me, I know that looks like. I was reluctant to even use a crystal. I had a client come to a session one day, and she brought a crystal like this, which is a Lemurian seed crystal. She brought it. She asked if we could use it, and I was like, I don't know, I guess. And I didn't really know what to do with it. But what I observed was that having the crystal, now crystal has a highly ordered molecular structure, and its physical property is that when you apply a current on this end, it comes out this end in an amplified pulse. But it also seems to, according to Jerry Tennant, create scalar waves that come out the side. I'm not going to try to explain to you what scalar waves are, but they're good things, especially coming out of a crystal. But what it is basically highly ordered information. And that when we're working in these stuck spots in the field, there's a tremendous amount of disorder. And so if you just give the body a shot of order, and it can really release and relax. It doesn't work all the time with a crystal, but this time it did. A lot of times it does. It just releases whatever is held there, kind of like magic. Sometimes what the body really just needs is to hear itself, and then the crystal won't work, and you'll need to just kind of keep on. It's like if my guitar is in tune and yours is really out of tune, I got to keep giving you that D so that you can tune to it, right? So it's the same with our bodies. If our bodies are really out of tune, the body will keep asking, like, give me that coherent tone there again, give me that coherent tone there again, and then once it's had enough order to tune itself around, then it'll release the spot. Good. Okay. So just coming into that, and this is an interesting area because it's definitely sticky in here. And I would just say, I feel like there's definitely some of you who it's really time to let go of something. Whether it's a habit, who you are. A job, a relationship, right? That's how we grow. Because if we don't let go of things when we know that we need to, and we keep on kicking that can down the road, you encounter what is sometimes called the spiritual 2x4, right? Which is the universe is like, okay, dude, if you're not going to make the changes yourself, douche, I'm going to make it for you. And we don't want to get to that point because it usually involves pain. So, okay. So the right knee relates to us being blocked, moving forward. So, this might be, I remember having a client, I got into around 18, and it was so stuck. And I was like, geez, what happened at 18 with you and your natural inclinations? He said, I really wanted to go to Yale. My family really wanted me to go to Harvard. I went to Harvard. So that sort of thing where you have a desire, you have an inclination, you know yourself what you want to do, but people are there saying, no, you can't do that. No, you'll never make a living as a musician. You have to go to business school. Things like that. And if we're turned away and turned away and turned away from our natural inclinations over and over again, like I said earlier, we start to sabotage ourselves. And so when we clean out the right knee and we make that more free, we find it much easier to follow our natural inclinations. We actually find it easier to get things done, because a lot of what piles up outside of the right knee of people is just procrastination, self-sabotage, not good enough, bad time management. I mean, there are so many ways that we can get in our own way of really moving with our own flow. So really freeing up that sense of, wow, I'm really feeling inclined to finish this project, so I'm going to go do that, right? Or whatever it is. Okay, so the root chakra on the left side I've found relates to unmet needs. So anything that we want to be doing, being, or having, but we're not, and that might be, boy, I really want to get in a regular yoga practice, but I keep on eating ice cream in front of the TV instead. A lot of the patterning for this goes back to birth and infancy and that frustration, because on the other side, just above this in the second chakra is frustration. So you end up with this sort of coupled experience of frustration over unmet needs in here. And I'm actually feeling quite a lot of anxiety right in there. That's like teenage angst right in through here, probably. So as the tuning fork moves through it, I'm able to read it because the terrain changes. It vibrates differently in my hand. When I use the 174, it really makes all kinds of different sounds that I've really been able to learn to understand and to translate. But that would take too long to go through all of that. But if you're curious about that, my group distance sessions, that's what I do. I go through the 174 and I read the group energy and adjust it. And you can really hear how the sounds change when it's being done. So, when we come into a centered place in the root chakra, when people really pile up energy in this left hip here, they're not getting rubber on the road. This is very much like what I call the left-hand ditch, where you are, just in this sort of, you spinning your wheels but not getting anywhere. And so when we get energy centered, especially in the pelvis, in the first and second chakras, we're much more inclined to really accomplish things, really, whatever that looks like. Whatever it is that we desire, we want to do, whatever problems we want to solve, whatever, stressors are going on, when we're really in alignment here, we're much more able, it's like being an all-wheel drive vehicle, with all your wheels going, and you're able to just be more effective, more powerful, really. Okay, so the right side of the root chakra I've observed relates to what I call busy mind, busy body. And it's the tendency, like we were talking about earlier, to just really stay busy. Whether it's overthinking, that monkey mind, whether it's just busy work. In an imbalanced way, it goes into something like an OCD, like over hand washing, over straightening, over cleaning, or whatever it is that people can get kind of OCD about. That is emotional management. That is absolutely emotional management. Emotions, this is the big elephant in the room, you guys, because you can end up with health issues, go to the doctor, and nobody's going to ask you, like, what's going on in your heart and mind. You get poked and prodded and tested as like some kind of meat machine and run through all these tests, and does anybody say, hey, what's going on in your life? What kind of stress are you under? What kind of emotions have you been feeling? They did this really big study where, it's like, I don't know if there was a meta-analysis or it was just a really big study. But basically what they discovered is it's not smoking that kills you. It's not eating meat that kills you. It's not, whatever other bad lifestyle choices that kills you. It's stress. stress is what kills people. And stress is not knowing how to manage your emotions properly, not knowing how to deal with the inputs you're getting and your adrenals amping up and your tension in your system. That's emotional. It's emotional. And every single thing that I've healed on that whole list that I had, I could probably boil down to some emotional story that was buried somewhere in my field. So we don't ever talk about this. Emotions are like dirty words, honestly. And yet they are, it is the lack of acknowledgement and the mismanagement of emotions that's killing people all over the place. So when we do biofield tuning, we really get into what's the underlying sort of emotional template that is causing, when we get here in the second chakra now, I'm on the left side of the second chakra, and so that makes the head be there. Just so you know, that's the way I'm working. For example, digestive issues. So ulcerative colitis is a condition where you're actually bleeding out your butt, right? And you can go to the doctor and they're going to try to give you all kinds of drugs. In every case that I've ever witnessed of that condition, the person was severely repressing their emotions. Severely. Pills don't fix that. Everybody that I've ever treated who had irritable bowel syndrome was suppressing frustration. The people who I've treated who had Crohn's disease, incredibly vicious inner critics just eating away at their insides. Guilt up the wazoo. Okay? These are leaky gut. Okay, leaky gut. Giving your power away. Left, right, and center. Giving your power away. No boundaries. This is your mind, people. And these, anything that's going south, you got to ask yourself, what is emotionally going on here? What emotion am I mismanaging, not dealing with? Okay, so now we're coming into, this is a frustration. This feels pretty intense right here. So I'm just going to ask everybody, take a big breath again. And, the second chakra is interesting. The very first set of tuning forks I had, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, the fork D was the one used in the second chakra. I went through this experience when I was trying to write my book and do everything else at the same time that I started actually wearing out my forks. They would develop a buzz, and I ended up having to actually have my own special forks made because biofield tuning actually can really put a lot of stress on regular forks. But the only one that died in that first set was the D fork from the second chakra. And what I find is that most people's second chakra energy is not focused. It's spread out across their field like peanut butter. And people are so bogged down in guilt and shame and frustration and disappointment and low self-worth that they have no real power here at all. Okay? So this energy center, when balanced, this is all about pleasure, intimacy, receiving money, having good self-worth. Like, how many people do you know who are really healthy in their sexuality, in their creativity, in their financial life, in their ability to enjoy pleasure? Oftentimes when I ask people that in classes, I'm like, who's really good with that? It's usually the men that raise their hands, not the women, which I think is really interesting. Some women do, right? So that's a really interesting thing. Like, we've had so much guilt and shame and noise and nonsense layered over this part of our body. And it's not even just the sexuality part, but just even like the belly, right? As women, we've been really programmed, like, oh, you got to have a flat belly, and if you don't, then, you're not beautiful, right? I mean, we're not biologically designed to have flat bellies. We have fat there to protect babies, right? But we've been so programmed that we have to be, and guys too, right? We're always being shown six packs. And if you don't have a six pack, you're not beautiful. And then we end up kind of outside ourselves judging our bellies, not inside enjoying them, right? So, a big part of this work in biofield tuning is about, being able to really occupy your body, to really inhabit and be present in your own body and in your own feelings. We don't use the phrase raise your vibration in this work because it really implies that higher is better and lower is bad. And, that's not true. Like, there's no hierarchy of good or bad vibrations in your body. There are vibrations that stretch for light years across one cycle. Is that bad? No, right? So, a lot of what I see in people who, again, this sort of, a lot of New Age stuff is a blind alley, and it's not good language. When we talk about raising our vibration, we're trying to go higher, and then we judge ourselves when we get angry, that sort of thing. In biofield tuning, we're more interested in clarifying your vibrations, cohering your vibrations, making you present in your body and grounded right now. Like, we're not trying to get anywhere. We just want to be present here and now without trying to raise anything other than your voltage. I want you to raise your voltage because the more coherent you are, the more energy you can carry in your system. So I want you to start thinking about raising your voltage instead of raising your vibration. Okay, so we're in kind of an interesting sticky spot right here. This third chakra, left side, mother. History of your relationship with your mother, your birth. This is early relationship with mother I'm in right here. I got really bogged down. Okay. So let's just breathe around that one. Send love to your mom. Come back and see if we can get that moving. Okay, so the sort of emotion that I found in this particular area is powerlessness. Powerlessness, when we feel powerless. So a lot of times people who end up with pain, like in this area of their body, the emotional component there is feeling powerless about something. And when we feel powerless, we don't act, right? When we feel powerless, we become a victim. So a lot of people I've seen, again, in the New Age community, because those are a lot of people who are drawn to working with tuning forks, and come to my classes, have a negative association with the word power. Just like a lot of people, spiritual people have a negative association with the concept of money. And, there's different stories around that. Power, oh, I was powerful in a last life and I abused it. Now I can't be powerful in this one. Or powerful people are bad kind of thing. But power is just the ability to make things happen. And if we have all these spiritual and good and nice people denying their own power, then you're not making good and nice things happen in the world. And the people who, don't have a problem with power make bad things happen in the world, right? Non-beneficial. And the thing is that most good people really care about the well-being of others. So the more powerful you become, the more you can support the well-being of others. Right? It's not mutually exclusive. The more abundant you become, the more artists you can support, right? I mean, to be powerful and abundant means that you can do powerful and abundant good things in the world. And we shouldn't deny our own desire or ability to make that kind of contribution as good, humble people, okay? So own your power, own your abundance, use it for good. Don't tell yourself stories that's really just the programming from the upper echelons that you've all been programmed with to keep you powerless so that they can stay powerful. You're just as powerful. I mean, we're actually way, 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 way more powerful than we have any idea. Okay, now we're in Dad, and I'm stuck here too. So the right side of the solar plexus relates to Father, the liver, and also the emotion of anger. So a lot of addictions, alcohol, sugar, drugs, often go back to a difficult relationship with Dad, and that can be going on for generations. When I was doing this work, in my early exploration, I remember thinking, so programmed in school with like Freud and it's all Mom's fault, but I'm seeing a lot of problems related to Dad. Dad's an alcoholic, Dad's a rageaholic, Dad's in prison, Dad's not there, Dad's emotionally distant, Dad's just not even around. I mean, there's really a lot of Dad stuff that, we don't really talk about. so much. So, you know, a lot of people have a lot of turbulence in this area, and then anger stuff, which is, you know, part of it. And, you know, the thing is that there's no such thing as an infinite emotion. I think when I first started dredging up my own anger, it seemed like it was going to go on and on and on and on. And I did finally, like, process the backlog. And, you know, once you process the backlog of any emotion, whether it's sadness, that was another thing. I had a huge backlog of sadness. It took me such a long time to work through, but I did. You know, there's no such thing as an infinite emotion. And if you keep on diligently digesting whatever is undigested in your field, you get to a place where you don't have a backlog. And when you have an emotion arise, it's not plugging into a resonant node of every other undigested similar experience in your field. And you're not having a massive disproportionate reaction because of that resonance. You have an appropriate, yeah, big breath here. Listen to Anne, she knows. Angela is one of my apprentices, so she knows the drill with all of this. When we have a healthy, balanced solar plexus, we're able to set goals and achieve them. We're able to get to yes. We're able to interact in a healthy way with other people's energy. Okay, so left side of the heart holds energy related to sadness, grief, and loss. So anything, you know, that we're carrying that's heavy there, maybe, you know, we've had sad things in childhood, or, you know, at any point in our life. Very often in this culture, we're encouraged to just stay busy, right? What is one of the best cures for sadness? Oh, just stay busy, go do something. So a lot of people have a lot of undigested sadness in their being, and that gets in the way. It's heavy, you know, and it'll turn into depression. One of the other causes that I see of depression is anger turned inwards. So again, a lot of people who deny their anger, maybe suppress it with sugar, you know, won't allow themselves to be fiery, that turns in on you and becomes heavy and becomes depression. And so, you know, depression is just fire that's been kind of had a wet blanket thrown over it. So, you know, anger is very often valid. You know, we get angry when our boundaries are trespassed. And it's the energy to defend your boundaries. You know, we need that in order to stay healthy and whole. We've got to have boundaries. And we've got to know when those boundaries are crossed. And we've got to know how to communicate to people when they have crossed them, and, you know, in a way that's healthy, and say, hey, that's not cool, please don't do that again. You know, and ideally they'll go, oh, I'm sorry, you know, unless they're an asshole, and then they'll be like, fuck you. And then you'll be like, electron stealer, out of my life, instead of putting up with them, right? So, you know, we can learn to create environments where our boundaries are respected by using our word in a healthy way. Sorry for swearing, in case that offended anyone. That's what happens when you don't have a throat filter anymore. Okay, so coming into the heart, and when the heart is balanced, when the heart is, you know, really centered and open, we're just more free to love. Love people, love life, love situations. That's where that joy starts to come in. Right side of the heart is saying yes when we mean no, putting other people's needs ahead of our own. You know, being a caregiver, a caretaker, an accommodator. Lots of people out there like that, especially if your own needs weren't important. Oldest children. Who's an oldest child in the family? Yeah, ever had right shoulder issues? You know, many times oldest children just become indoctrinated into being the one who's always taking care, always in charge, always making sure everyone's okay. And, you know, their own needs are like, what? I have needs, you know, I thought it was really about everybody else. So very often oldest children, you know, I see a lot of right shoulder stuff with them. And you know what? There's absolutely nothing wrong with taking care of people. It really isn't. I mean, people need to be taken care of. You know, we need to be mothers and we need to be caregivers. But when we do it and do it and do it and it's killing us, like, that's a problem, right? So again, we have to find those healthy boundaries around where we can say no, when we need to say no, what we need to do to take care of ourselves so that we don't become resentful, you know, so that we can stay healthy. So that, do you know, this is a really interesting statistic. I think it's something like 66% of caregivers die before the person they're taking care of. Right? I mean, that was the way it was in my family. My dad had a stroke, and my mom took care of him for 15 years, and she died, and he lived for 3 more years. So, you know, we got to be really mindful as caregivers, you know, that we don't get stuck in the story that it has to be this way, that there's no alternative. That's where we want to step back and widen the lens and bring that energy into a nice, healthy flow in the center. Okay, so the left side of the throat, this is a big one, you guys. This is that which we don't say or express. And, you know, we've really been conditioned. Children should be seen and not heard. You know, in school, we're not allowed to speak up. We're not allowed to argue. We're not allowed to, you know, present opposing viewpoints. In businesses, you go and become an employee. You do what you're told, right? So, and we're not allowed to express emotions. Big boys don't cry. Nice girls don't get angry. All these rules all over the place that, like, you know, really just block this left side of the throat. And I think of all the energy centers that I work on, you know, the throat is one of the most important because it's by our word that we create our life. And if you're not speaking the truth of who you are, of what you need, of what you desire, of whatever it is that wants to come out, then you end up in a life that has nothing to do with you. That's really all about everybody else. So if you're saying what other people want to hear, you know, you're doing what other people want you to do, you're not advocating for yourself, there's a good chance you're going to end up with chronic fatigue or something way worse than that. I mean, pretty much without exception, the people that I have worked on with low thyroid, with low energy, with really anything, they are not flowing in the throat chakra in a good way. So, you know, be really mindful of what arises for expression that you suppress, that you push back and go, no, because what you're doing when you do that is you're taking your own life force and you're sequestering it away. You're going, nope, I don't accept this part of me, go away. But anything that arises up for expression that doesn't get expression doesn't go away. It just kind of sits there. It accumulates in your field, it accumulates in your body. In my practice, you know, I'd be working on people and I'd have these really weird things come through my mail slot and I'd be like, I don't want to say that. And I'd try to censor it, but it would bounce around in my head like a pinball, you know, and finally I'd have to be like, and spit it out. And I'd say, you know, I just keep seeing these pair of white sneakers over and over again. I don't know what that means. And then they'd be like, oh, that means this, and that's so significant. And oh my God, this gives me insight and this huge breakthrough. And I'd be like, wow, okay. So I learned how to say whatever came to mind in my practice. It became a rule, because if I didn't speak what came up, then it would bounce around and it would get in the way of the next moment. And so then I started applying that to my life. And I started just speaking whatever came to mind, you know, whenever it came up. And, you know, I learned diplomacy the hard way doing that. But I learned it. And it's really cleared my mind so much, because don't you hate that feeling of like afterwards you're like, I should have said this, or I need to say this to somebody. And, you know, we can get really stressed out about that stuff. But if you just spit it out in the moment, right when it's up, then you're not burdened by it later on. It's much more efficient. Okay, so the right side of the throat is speaking but not being heard. So this is being left to cry it out in the crib until, no, it's another 2 hours before we can feed you. You know, just also fighting and arguing, like if you have a spouse or a kid and you're always, you know, yelling at each other, you're going to really accumulate energy on this side of the throat. So this is feeling pretty intense on this side. But just think about that. You know, I think anytime we want something from somebody else, give what it is you seek to get. So if you want to be heard, listen more deeply. And in my book, in the very beginning of my book, there's a little parable on truth having 144 sides that I really recommend you read. But, basically what it says is that, truth is multifaceted. And, you and I could be looking at some figure, and the side that's facing me is blue, and the side that's facing you is gray. And you'll be like, it's gray. And I'll be like, no, it's blue. And you'll be like, no, it's gray, right? And we might want to beat each other up over that. But the fact of the matter is that we're both right. Because from my perspective, it's blue. From your perspective, it's gray. So, in any time that you're in an argument, somebody, from their perspective, that is their experience. And if you're willing to go around to the other side of the table and go, oh my God, you're right. From this side, it really is that color, right? To be willing to see, their perspective on whatever that truth is, to honor it, to listen to it, to validate it. That's what you want, right? You want to be validated. You want to be listened to. You want to be heard, right? So you want to give that. And when we can really come from the center of our throat chakra, this is a huge piece of having high voltage. It really is. Really moving through here and singing. My next goal, my vocational goal, is to sing a lot more because it's really, I don't know, it's energizing, it's fun. It's just a great way for us to be in the world. We were designed to sing and dance. That's what humans do. And I think part of the illness in our culture and society now is the fact that we don't sing and dance, right? We're like, oh, I can't sing. Who believes they can sing? That's not very many. That's not even a third. Not even a third. Now you ask every kid in kindergarten, can you sing? They'll be like, yeah, I can. Right? What happens? Where does that go? Yeah. Yeah, bad music teachers. That's not an easy job. Okay, so now I'm on the left side of the head. And this is the tendency to think into the future and worry, all right? My mom used to worry all the time, and I remember as a kid being like, Mom, it's highly illogical to worry. But she had been bombed out of her house in World War II in Belfast. She has some PTSD that I didn't have. But it was really easy for me as a child to see how illogical it is to worry, right? It's a huge waste of energy. Your brain is the biggest user of glucose in your system. And if you are spinning out, worrying about the future, you're using up huge amounts of fuel and energy. And is it making anything any better? Is it helping? No. No. It's stealing your ability to enjoy this moment is what it's doing, right? So, this is something we really want to be mindful of is like, am I, and I've learned this, that if I start thinking too much about the future, like I spin out on it. Like, it's an uncomfortable place to go. So I've learned to just not go there. Like I sit down and I spend time planning because we need to do that. But for the rest of the time, I do my best to just really stay in this present moment and stay in my senses, what I'm observing, what I'm noticing, stay here now. And this is one of the aims of sound healing, and it's one of the written aims of sound healing, is to help bring people into a relaxed, alert presence. Here I am. What's going on? How can I play? Right? Because otherwise, we're like spinning out on some past thing or spinning out on some future thing, but that's just crazy because it's not real. And all it is conjecture about what might be. It has no real basis in reality. But now that said, it's not as easy as change your thinking, change your life, because you have all these patterns in your field too. And that's one of the things about this work that has been really rewarding to me is to really help people to settle down these hamster wheels that spin thinking about the future, or this side is about the past. So this side has a male hamster. He's spinning, thinking about the future and all the things he has to do. This side has a female hamster, and she's running backwards, and she's feeling regret, remorse, guilt, that sort of thing, looking backwards. Now, obviously, those are just metaphors for the torsion fields in the hemispheres of the brain that actually have different spin. This side is this side of the body. So this is the right side of the body is yang, is more outward, is more hot and outward and future. And the female side is more blue, it's cool, it's yin, it's inward, it's more past. I find that this side can also hold, any difficult memories that we go back to again and again and be like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, or I wish that hadn't happened. So, that's also kind of dumb to indulge that kind of thinking because, whatever the lesson was, like get the lesson, file it, don't do it again. But to go back, you don't really know, like if that was the right thing or the wrong thing or, it's just that judgment that we do. That, expends energy, but does it give you a return? I have this little thing I call note to self. Whenever I do something really stupid that has a bad outcome, instead of beating myself up about it, I just make a little post-it note that says note to self. Next time when in a similar situation, try to remember to not do that and do this instead, right? And then you're like, so then if the inner critic pops up and starts giving me a hard time, right? Because it was so stupid. I go, thanks, I got the memo, it's filed. I don't need you to, chase me around. You wouldn't do that to a child, right? Like if a child burnt themselves on the wood stove, would you chase them around the house repeatedly hammering at them that they shouldn't have done that? No, that would be abuse, right? And yet that's what the thinking mind does to people. It chases you around and hammers you, right? That's inappropriate. Stop that. I've got the memo. We're good to go. Okay, so finally, this is the crown chakra. And the crown chakra doesn't really appear to really hold much emotion, but it does hold our relationship with time. This is an interesting thing that I've observed about being in right relationship with time. Because a lot of people's stress actually comes from feeling like you don't have enough time, right? So, that's just a story. That's just a flow or a relationship in your body. When your crown chakra is aligned, what is nature? What is the explicate universe but cycles, right? The earth goes around the sun, the moon goes around the earth, the sun goes around the solar system, right? Everything, and it's all perfect cycles, right? Have you ever seen into the geometry of like the path that Venus makes? It's like perfect geometry. So nature is all in perfect timing with all of these perfect repeatable cycles. So, there's plenty of time. Nature has all the time it needs, right? So when our crown chakra is in alignment and flow, and we're really in alignment with the flow of the universe, then we have plenty of time. We have all the time we need to do everything that we need to get done. And we can relax and enjoy that sense of flow. There, keep your inner speed just in this, well, I call it tubing. I keep my inner speed kept at tubing, which is like if you ever go inner tubing on a hot summer day down a river, it's kind of like a slow, lazy pace, right? Sometimes you go through a little rapids, it speeds up. But for the most part, it's pretty laid back. It's pretty enjoyable. So even though I have a million things to do and I'm, very, very productive, my inner speed is pretty much always set at tubing. And, that's a really nice pace. Yeah, because whether you're like up in the front of yourself and you're frantic and you're crazy, or whether you're laid back and groovy, you're not getting any more done. You're not being any more productive when you're all tense and freaking out, right? You're just expending energy unnecessarily. When you're going with the flow, you're getting whatever needs to be done, but you're doing it with ease. Good. Okay, so one last adjustment there. Okay, so I want you guys, I'm going to close you up, but I want you to check in with your bodies and just see what you notice. Does anybody feel any different? Do you feel more relaxed? Like, anybody got an observation around that? Yeah. Your head is buzzing? Good.
I feel extended on the left and cooler on the right.
Cooler on the right? Okay, good. Anybody else?
I feel less overwhelmed.
Less overwhelmed. Yeah, nice. And that's kind of the intention here, is to just kind of let go of any of this extra stuff, that we're putting energy into, so that then we can just kind of, free up energy for what we want and what we need to do. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap everybody up. this little cocoon that we do, because we just do a kind of psychic surgery. So when we're done, we just want everyone to be wrapped, and then I will release you from the stage. So good, okay, and we're on time. So so that's it for today. Thank you so much for coming. We can stay and do some extra Q&A afterwards, but it is 4:30, so I want to let those of you who need to go. Thank you so much for coming and being part of this first thing for me. Thank you.